Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll understand the very first tool of DevOps, that is Git. This video is mainly for those who are new to DevOps and they just want to explore new things in DevOps from basics. So this course is mainly for them. So let's start with today's video. Okay, so in today's video, we'll have these following topics. Basically, we'll understand what VCS is. So there is an introduction of VCS. Then we'll see a tool that is GitHub. We'll also create a free account on GitHub. And then we'll see how to install Git Bash on your local machine. And once that is done, we'll go with a sample repository creation on GitHub. Once that is done, we'll use some git basic commands and we'll check the connectivity of Git Bash with GitHub. So guys, what is version controlling system? So whenever we start in DevOps, then this comes as a very first tool. So version controlling is also known as source control. So this is basically a kind of practice of tracking and managing changes to your software code. So before this tool, developers were doing their work and they were just doing creation of code on their local machine. But when they are done with the things and if there is anything getting wrong, then they need to go to that code and they need to just check it out that I just want to make it to the code that it was before it was getting break. So we can only see the changes that we have done latestly on the local. So this version controlling tool is a very good tool because it keeps track of versioning. So suppose if something is getting wrong in the latest code, then you can get it back to the previous version which was working correctly. So this is basically a version controlling tool, or you can say a source control tool, and which actually keeps track and managing changes to software code. Version control system are basically software tools that help software teams to manage changes to their source code over time. And version control software also keeps track of every modification that you did in your code, and in a very special kind of database it stores those changes. If a mistake is getting done by any developer, then it can turn back the clock and compare earlier version of the code to help fix the mistake while minimizing disruption to all team members. So now let us understand what basically Git is. So Git is one of the version controlling tool. There are other version controlling tool also available in market, like we have SVN also. So here is a brief introduction of Git. I'll place one video where we'll discuss Git in detail. But in today's video, our focus is mainly to create an account on GitHub, install Git Bash, and then do a connection between these two tools. And we'll also run few Git commands in order to check whether connectivity is working fine or not. So this tool Git is basically a version controlling tool. It is a decentralized version controlling tool, while the SVN that I was talking about, it's a centralized version controlling tool. So the benefit of decentralized version controlling tool is this, that multiple developers can work at the same time. Developers can have their local copy on the system and can make changes to their local copy, but once they are done with their work, they can push their code to remote repository. So there are two terms that are used here, like local repository you can say, or remote repository. So local repository, what you can consider, developer is developing the code, so he has some files or some folder on his local, so that particular folder you can consider as a local repository. What is remote repository? Once we'll create an account on GitHub, then on GitHub we'll create some folder structure inside which will have files that are related to code. So that GitHub folder structure or GitHub repository is mainly refers to remote repository. So guys, how we can create a free account on GitHub? So I have taken some screenshots. So firstly, we'll just see these screenshots, and once we'll be familiar with these screenshots, then we'll go with a practical demo of creating GitHub free account. So basically we need to go to a URL, that is https:// it's github.com, and once we'll be on this URL, then we need to click on sign up option. In the next, we need to provide all the details for our account creation. So firstly, we need to provide the email address. After that, we need to provide all the details that are getting popped up over there. And once all the details are getting filled up, then account will get create. And we just need to click on the link that will be provided on your email in order to get confirmation. And once that is done, then we can sign in into our account. So we can just click on this sign in option that is highlighted. Once we have clicked on that, then we need to log into GitHub account with the credentials that we have set it during the account creation. So we just need to provide the email address and the password, and then we can get logged in. Okay, so this is actually the very first page. After you will provide your credentials, then you will get the similar screen in front of you. So here you are seeing one highlighted icon of plus. So this is basically the place from where we can create a repository. So we'll click on plus sign, and then these following options will be in front of us. So we can click on new repository. So this is basically the repository I was talking about, a remote repository. So from here, the repository that will get created is basically the repository that is known as remote repository. Okay, so once we'll click on new repository, then a similar kind of screen will come in front of us. So here we need to provide all the details. So we need to just provide a repository name. So as on the screen we can see, I have just provided a test repository. So any name you can give here, there is no compulsion. For this example, I have just taken test as an example. And after that, you will have two options of your repository, whether you want your repository to be publicly available or you want it to get privately available. So in public and in private, what is the difference? In public, basically anyone on the internet can see your repository and you can choose who can commit changes to your repository. But in case of private, you actually choose who can see and who can commit to your repository. So basically, in case of testing purpose, we can go with a public repository. But if you want it to make for production or for anything that is important, you don't want to get it done or get it see by anyone on the internet, then better to make it private. So whenever we create a free account, then we have certain options to get some public repository, but on private repository we have some restrictions. We can only make it one or two, whatever is getting allowed as a free account. But in case of public, we can create multiple. So for today's example, we'll take a public repository to make this Git repository as a remote repository. And after that, you can see that there is a tick that is highlighted, add a readme file. So when this repository will get create, then there will be a file that will already be there, which is a readme file. So once the repository will get create, we'll see one file. So that's why we have ticked. If you will not tick, then there will be no file over there. It will be a blank repository. And once all these settings are done, we can just click on create repository button that you can see in the end. So once we'll click on that create repository link, then you can see that this particular screen will come in front of you, and here we can see that test named repository has been created now, which is highlighted. After that, we are seeing that there is a repository name as a test that is mentioned, and the branch name is main. So here we have branching concept also. So as I said that I'll create another video, so there I'll discuss what is this branching strategy. So one thing as a brief I can explain you here, whenever we'll create any repository, then by default we get one branch, that is a main branch. And if we want to get creation of multiple other branch, so we can create new branches by taking reference of this main branch. So for today's video, we will take only this main branch and will work using this main branch. And after that, you can see there is one committed file, that is readme.md, which basically we selected as a tick. So one file is getting committed here. So in this way, we can create a sample repository on GitHub post creation of your GitHub account, and then we can start working on this repository. So once this repository creation is done, then suppose if you want this particular code on your local machine, then how you'll do it? So basically, whenever we create a repository, it will remain there in GitHub GUI, but it will not be there on your local machine. So if you want to get it cloned to your local machine, we just need to click on this code button, and after that we need to clone this particular repository by selecting either an HTTPS or SSH or GitHub CLI. So in our video we'll see as an example HTTPS repository cloning we'll see. So the URL that is highlighted here, will take this URL and we'll use a command git clone so that this particular repository will get cloned to our local machine. And as we are able to see a file name readme.md here on this particular GUI, GitHub GUI, we'll see the same file in our local machine also. Okay, so once this is done, then I have said that we will clone this particular repository to our local, but how we'll clone that repository to our local? So basically there should be some software on our local machine by which we can make connection to this GitHub repository and then we can start cloning. So in our local machine we'll use a software that is a Git Bash software. So in order to install that Git Bash software, we just need to go to Google and we can just type like git bash download as I have highlighted in the screenshot. And once that is done, we can go with the very first option, that is Git for Windows, as we are using Windows machine as a client machine, so we can use this option. After that we can go to this particular link and here we can click on this download option. Once that is done, we'll see that one exe will get download to your download section. We'll go to that exe and we'll do a double click in order to get this git bash installed. So once this Git Bash installation process is getting started, so multiple screens will come in front of us. So we just need to make all the options by default as it is, and we can just press next button till end. And once that installation is done, so we'll be able to see that Git Bash is getting installed. We can go to Windows search button on the left side of the bottom of your screen and then we can type Git Bash, and once we'll click on that icon, then the following prompt will come in front of you as you can see on my screen. So this is basically your Git Bash prompt. So in order to make a connection between our Git Bash and the particular GitHub repository, so what we'll do, we'll just create one folder on our local machine. So say we are just creating a testing folder on our local machine, and once that is done, then we can go to this git bash prompt. We can browse that particular testing folder. As you can see on my screen, we have just go with the command cd testing, and we are now inside that particular testing folder. In order to make a connection, so first of all we need to run two commands on our git bash, that is basically git config command, where we need to provide our first name and last name, and then we need to provide our email id, because this is required in order to make your identity available in front of Git, that who are you, so that whenever you are trying to clone something or whenever you are trying to push something to the repository, then Git may understand, and every time it is not prompting you for the username and password to provide any type of basically maybe it is either committing or maybe either cloning. So every operation that you'll use using git command, then it will not ask for any kind of username and password prompt. Once that will get saved here, it will take authentication from there and you can get your work done. Okay guys, so we are now a bit clear about what Git is and why we use it and what all tools are required in order to make that Git DevOps tool working. So basically we need GitHub account, and then we need Git Bash installation, and then we can create our code, we can make changes to our code, and then we can push that code to our remote repository. So from here we can now understand that the very first tool of Git basically DevOps, that is Git, so how to use it. And we are now done with the theory part, so now let's start with the practical demo of Git, Git Bash and your GitHub. Okay, so this is basically our GitHub console, and now we can start creating a free account. Okay, so looks like the prompt is not getting up. Just a minute. Okay, so this is basically the screen that I have showed in my slide. So we can just click on this sign up option, and here we need to provide our email address. Okay, so we are done. We can create a password here. Okay, so now click on continue. Looks like password may be compromised. Okay, so looks like it is not taking this password. Let me create some big password. Yes, now it is taking. We can create on continue button. We can give any username. Okay, so we can take any username of our choice. So let's create DevOps as a username. Unavailable. Okay, DevOps Git 1234. Okay, so this username is available. We can take it. We can click on continue. See product updates. We can say simply no. Okay, we need to solve this puzzle. Quite. What we need to do, use the arrow to rotate the animal to face in the direction of hand. Okay, it's a bit interesting. Ah, submit. Oh, not right. That was not quite right. Make sure the animal is facing in the same direction. Okay guys, so quite interesting verification account puzzle was there. I have solved it. So now we can click on create account. Okay, so we need to go to our email and can place this code. Just me, I can select because as of now I'm doing it for testing. I can mention as a teacher. Okay, so there are a lot of options. What specific features are you interested in using? Automation and CI/CD we can select, as we are doing DevOps things, and when we can click on continue. So this is our next page, free, unlimited, public and private repositories. You can see here, as I showed you in those slides, that we can either create a public repository or private repositories, and this kind of like 2000 CI/CD per minute per month is available. 500 MB of package storage is there, 120 core hours of code space compute, 15 GB of code space storage. This is under free, and get additional teacher benefits, GitHub team, and there are so many things. So right now we are not actually need these things, so we can just go with continue for free, and looks like our account has been created. So now, yes, you can see now that this is basically your GitHub page. From here, what we can do now, if we follow those slides, then we are on our dashboard. So we can go to this plus icon, then we can create a new repositories. Okay, so here we can give any name, like suppose we have given test, it is available, and we can go with the public repository. If you want, you can create private repository if you don't want to get it viewed by someone, but as of now we are doing it for just testing purpose, so we can take it as a public repository. Then we can click on this particular, add a readme file, and this will be the file that will be the very first file that will get committed to your remote repository. And I think rest we don't need anything. And the one thing that I was discussing is the branch. So you can see that this will set main as a default branch, so one branch will get created, and that branch is your main branch. We can then create on, sorry, we can then click on creating repository. So now you can see the similar screen we are seeing here, like test repository has been created, it is a public repository. We can see a branch as a main branch, then we have this code section here, and we have this readme.md, that is the very first file that got commit to this GitHub. And here in the code section, if we'll click, then we can see that https icon, ssh and github cli icon, and this is basically the URL that we'll use once we'll clone this particular repository on our local machine. So our very first task is done, like we are now be able to get logged in inside the GitHub, and our free account got created. So second thing now that we have to do is to install Git Bash on our local machine. So let's go to Google. Okay, we are here. So here we can search for Git Bash installation. Windows. Okay, so here we can click on Windows option, and we just need a 64-bit Windows setup. Okay, so this setup is getting installed, so we'll wait until we'll get that exe. Once that exe will be with us, then we'll do that installation piece. So looks like that exe has been downloaded, and then we can go to that exe. Yes, so this is basically the installer for your Git Bash, and as I said that once this pop-up will be with you, you just need to click on create, and all the by default option you need to take it. So go for next screen, then again next screen. Okay, so it is saying this folder is already exists. Would you like to install the folder anyway? Maybe I have installed it previously also, so it is showing me that particular place. And we can change this particular directory, so I can give a folder name at, let's give it a git new folder. Okay, next, next, next. All these options will keep by default, will not make any changes to these options. Okay, so installation of Git Bash is now in progress. We need to wait until it successfully get installed. So wait for a few minutes. Okay, so this has now been installed, and we don't want to see this view release notes. We can go to finish. Okay, so Git Bash has now been installed. We can search that Git Bash option here, so we are able to see Git Bash here. So now you can see that we are inside this particular Git Bash CLI. So now we are done with our one installation and one free account creation. So GitHub piece is done, and now we also have successfully installed Git Bash. So now we just need to run two commands in order to make those username and email address that will get stored in your Git. So let me do it. Okay friends, so I have just played that username and the email, and now what we can do, we can try cloning this particular repository to this particular local machine and using Git Bash. So let's go to code section, and in the code section we can go to local in HTTPS, just copy this repository and try this command. So now you can see it is saying cloning into test repository. As this is public repository, so it is allowing you to get cloned, because if it is a private repository, then it asked for the user credentials for this particular repository, and once you'll provide those credentials, then only you will be able to clone it. So if we'll do ls command, basically it's one of the Linux command by which we can see what all files are there now in current folder. So previously it was blank, so now you can see one folder we are seeing, test folder, and if we'll go inside this test folder and if we'll do that lsp, so now you can see that readme.md file that you are seeing on GitHub, the similar file you can see here. So in this way we can now see that the connection between these two is done, but we are also right now not sure whether it is done or not. So that we'll do by doing one thing, we'll create some temporary files here and we'll try whether these files are getting pushed to this particular repository or not. So let's create some file. So touch is basically a command to create a file. So let's create one file, test1. Let's create another file, that is test2, and if we'll do ls command, so we can now see that two files has been created. But one thing, these two files are right now on our local repository, these are not on remote repository. So similar way developers work, they do creating code, they create their file, they place all the code in their file, and once they are done with their work, they just push that code to the file. So now we are done with this thing. So we can put one command here like git status, we can check. Okay, so when we are doing a git status command, you can see that we are right now on main branch and there are two untracked files, because readme.md was a file that was there on GitHub, so it was a tracked file, but these two are new files, so these two files are not tracked. So that's why we need to make it track. So we need to do one thing, the command that is showing here, we need to add this file to this particular repository. So we'll use git add file 1. So did not match any file, it is saying, sorry, it was git add test1. Okay, so it is added. Now we can do git test add, sorry, git add test2. Okay, and now if we'll run the same command, so we can see that now two files are ready for commit. So what we'll do, git commit -m, we can give any code that we want to give to these files. So test files created, we can give any message here that will relate to this particular commit. Okay, so now we can see that these two files are committed. Now if we'll go with git status command, so now it is saying that your branch is ahead of this branch by one commit, and you can use git push command to publish your local commits. So we'll use a git push command. Okay, and press enter, and now you can see that a remote permission to this particular repository denied to this, and unable to access this particular repository, the request is 403. So right now our repository is not getting connected, means these two repository, the local repository and our remote repositories, are not connected because we have just cloned. So we have just taken data because of the public repository, it get cloned. And now one thing we need to do, one command we need to run. So let me run that command in order to make this particular GitHub repository aware of this Git Bash shell. So give me a minute, let me run that command. Welcome back guys. Actually I got stuck by solving this particular problem. So there was something that I got missed while telling you the command. So I have noted now on one of the place. So what we need to do here is basically we need to give a touch to the file, and once those file got created, we need to just do, either you can do a git add dot command. So all three files will get you know get tracked by using this single command. If you want to get tracking of individual command, you can use git add and that particular file name. Then you need to do a git commit -m, the comment that you want to give it. And then this was the command that I got missed, like remote git remote add origin and the git repo URL. So this will actually make connection between these two things. So in case of git remote add URL, we were just need to place our HTTPS URL that we copied from there, so that we need to give it over here. So there was some problem in that. So what I did, I have also created one more repository. So it is also created in the same way. So I'm now using that repository because looks like as I did multiple demo over here, so maybe there is some kind of clash with this particular repository. So I'll use my that repository and I'll try to make those changes from there. So as of now you can see these many files are there in my repository along with this readme.md, and I can show it to you on this screen also. So you can see these all files are here. So I just did a git clone and all those files got cloned to my local machine, and now I'll use the same procedure that I was using at that time. So let's create one more file. So let's give it a name at test3. Okay, once it is done, we can either do git add dot command or we can give the file name. As it is a one file, we can give one file name. If there are multiple files, we can give dot instead of the that particular file name. So now test3 is there and we can do a git status command. So it is now saying that changes is ready to commit. So we'll do a commit git commit -m and the name of any comment you can give here. So we can give test3 file created. So as now you can see this is committed. Now we can do simply a git push command to push it to the remote repository. So now do a git push. So now you can say that it has pushed this particular test3 files on your GitHub console. So let's refresh this particular console. and now you can see test3 file is here. Then the comment that we have mentioned for this file, that is test3 file created. So we can now see this particular comment. So guys, in this way now we can see that we have successfully make connection between GitHub and your Git Bash, and in this way we can do coding, and we can make all the files that are there on our local machine, we can push it to the remote repository, and from this particular repository anybody can clone all this code, can start working, and again then push those changes to the repository. Any developer, those suppose two developers are working, so they both can clone, they can do all the code piece in the new files, and then they can commit those files, and then they can push those files in this particular repository. So in this way guys, we can start with Git, and anybody who is new, they can create their account on GitHub, they can install Git Bash, and once that is done, you can do this kind of testing.